Hi, and welcome to this panel for GenCon. I am Jason Russell. You can find me on Instagram at Critical Dice. And welcome to the Twitch channel for the Fabled 42, where we build community through friendship, gaming, and chaos. And we'll definitely have a lot of that third one here for this. This is our panel for GenCon, which we're so excited to be a part of. If you've been watching all this weekend with a ton of content for GenCon. So thank you for going on that wild ride with us. But this panel today is about building a better villain, or as I like to call it, building the better BBEG. So I have a couple of guests here, some friends of mine, both old and new, who are DMs of various ranges and experience levels. And I'd like for them to introduce themselves. GW, why don't you start?
Sure, yeah. Hey guys, I'm GW. You can find me on IG and Twitter under GW005. And you can also find me here on Wednesdays for the Realms of Ucador, our last two finale episodes coming up in the next 2 weeks at 6:30 Pacific. And yeah, I have been DMing for about 7 months now, and I'm happy to be here talking with you guys. I have made a lot of different villains and stories in my day, and I'm happy to share what I know.
Right on. All right, and Diane, why don't you go ahead and go next?
Hey everyone, my name's Diane Hall. You can find me at The Pretty DM, mostly on Instagram, but also on Twitter. Been DMing for 3 years. Have been loving D&D for over 10 years. And excited to talk about our villains.
Right on. And then our host and main operator of the Fable 42 Twitch channel, Chris Solo. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I'm Chris Solo. I'm the founder of the Fable 42 network. We started off as just Ucador, which was my homebrew. Which, if you're interested in watching that, we have our season finale on Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Pacific for our first pilot show, Realms of Ucador, with this guy up here. Season 2 is with this lady here. Yeah, I'm very excited to be here. If you ask our community about the greatest villains, they'll probably say my name, which is a compliment. Or I don't know. We'll see. Very excited to be here for this one. I love villains. I love good villains, not just a villain just to be a villain. I love good villains.
Yeah, exactly. And good villains are very important. Let me do one last plug. So we're going to do this for about an hour or so. And then after that, at 3 p.m. Pacific time, is Fables of Ucador, the game that I run. And it's also the finale. All this is kind of coming to a close very quickly here, all in the same kind of weekend. And so please stay tuned for that. I promise it'll be a great game. I'm super hyped to play it. But let's get into this. So we're talking about villains, and let's kind of go around the panel and also in chat. Who are some of your favorite villains, or the most iconic villain that you can think of when you say who makes a great villain? Does anyone want to go first on that?
I'll go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, ladies first.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I spoke about this before we went live, but the first one that popped in my mind was Voldemort of Harry Potter. He has a really great backstory, which is number one for me with villains, is, again, like what Chris said, is not just being a villain to be a villain, having a reason to drive you to do these villainous things.
Right on. GW?
So, Magneto from X-Men is mine.
Ooh, I hate you.
All right.
Wolverine's my
love-
favorite, so like that just doesn't work at all.
I love his backstory and kind of like the hardships and the suffering that he went through to get to where he was at his peak. It's just like you felt for him. He, was a radical in the things that he believed in, and in the way that he got there. He lost his family. He was in a concentration camp, and it was a blend of both, real world racial issues, plus on top of that, his mutant abilities, which people hate even more. So it was like a mosh pot of things, of all this hate that he grew up with, and he finally embraced it and became stronger, I guess you could say, from it to fight it off the best he thought he could. So he's definitely on my list.
Yeah,
List.
I think Magneto is a great example because his backstory is so strong, like Voldemort, that you see that great crimes have been perpetrated against him and his people. Because in the movies, at least, I think in the comics too, he's Jewish, and then also too later his people, the mutants, it just compounds. And so there's so many people who in real life that you see, if they've been mistreated and hated and had all these things perpetrated against them, the second they get a modicum of power, whether social or real power, they kind of want to pay it back tenfold. And so with this compounding kind of evil that's been done to him, it makes perfect sense narratively. And as humans, we go, yeah, I can't say that I wouldn't necessarily do the same thing when he gets his mutant powers and becomes the villain that he is. Do you think that Magneto, and this is for everybody, do you think that he is a kind of villain who is conscious or intentional in his motivation, that great evil was done to me, so I'm going to repay you? Or does he think that he is justified in his behavior?
That is a really good question. I think Magneto has evolved, whether if you read the comics or if you've watched the movies and the different people who played Magneto. And I'm actually a Fassbender fan of how he played Magneto.
Because, I'm a fan of both of them.
Because he's vicious and he's a fucking dick, but then he's also reserved and also just wants to protect his people. So it becomes more defensive than aggressive. But he has his moments. And then there's also moments in the movies too where he becomes that anti-hero, where he's actually on the same side if you go, depending how deep you go with the lore. So Magneto's a really good. I love villains that have all that history, all that that juiciness.
And for me, for your question, Jason, I think it's not so much he thinks that he is doing evil. He thinks that he's doing the right thing for his people, fighting back, giving mutants a chance to live a better life. Just very radicalistic. And of course, like Solo said, he does dip into some really, really bad villainous choices. Killing everyone who's not a mutant, things like that. But I want to say, first and foremost, in my opinion anyway, I think he is just radically doing what he thinks is right, and he doesn't think that he's the bad guy necessarily.
Yeah, I think that there's an element of him saying, what I'm doing is good, but the way I'm doing it, I realize is brutal, but I live in a brutal world. What else are they going to respond to? I can see that perspective at all. Diane?
I don't know a whole lot about Magneto, so I'm just gonna take your guys' word for it.
Nice.
Evil is very subjective. It is very subjective,
yeah, it is,
depending on perspective. Like, some people can view the Jedi as evil, depending on how you look at it, because they eradicated the Sith too, right? It's like, who's the lesser of two evils? But yeah, so
who's your villain, Solo?
Dracula is my villain.
Ooh.
Dracula's good. I win. No, I just know because
Dracula.
No,
Dracula.
Make your case, because right now Magneto's winning. Make your case.
No, Dracula, because over time Magneto is still human. He still has a normal lifespan. Dracula has lived multiple lives, depending on which stories and which lore that you read, which is why Victor, one of my big bads in Realms, was based off of Dracula, who has lived a life, lost, and died. lived life, lost, and died. Compacted villainism, compacted hate, compacted love over time, and then rinse and repeat. Just the sanity of being immortal will drive anyone off the rocker. That aside, like, I just love that he creates his own race of people. And again, it really just depends on which lore you look. I like a lot of the lore except for Twilight. That doesn't exist. I don't know what that bullshit is. But everything else about Dracula, for the most part, is good, right? There's a lot of different fun stories of Dracula, and they Dracula is like King Arthur. There's like so many different options. You're like, okay, this is entertaining, but whatever. But there's a lot of really fun things that just, you build up all these relationships over time. And then you have this protagonist-antagonist that goes over a long period of time, right? You have the church versus Dracula, or whatever versus Dracula, and then he rebuilds and he builds a community, and he builds his people, and he's just trying to create his race, and he's trying to do whatever. And obviously they eat people and all that stuff, but whatever. So like that's always been my thing. And I like villains that have a deep backstory, that have a purpose, that maybe weren't villains to begin with, just like Magneto. Like, I love the portrayal of Magneto's backstory when he was being ripped away from his parents in the movies, and he's screaming in pain. I love that addition. I don't even remember if that's how it happened in the comics, but I love that addition, that visual cue of, like, my family's being ripped away from me, like, what's going on? And then I do something crazy. Like, I love that stuff. Like, he might have that, like, because villains who have those sad stories, they make you feel for the villain. You actually empathize for that villain. That makes him really, like, oh shit. Like, when these guys killed his sister, like, in Realms, spoilers, you actually kind of felt for him for a moment. Like, his humanity spills out, and you're like, wait, no, I hate you, and then you keep moving, right?
So I have a question for you, Chris.
Yes.
I've seen the movies. I do like good vampire movies, Dracula and stuff. I don't know too much about Dracula's backstory. Can you tell me what made him make the choice to turn into Dracula? I don't really understand I don't know his backstory.
It's I need to process that for a second, because I am so exhausted from this weekend. I can't, honestly, in this moment right now, I can't remember how he originally became. And there's a lot of different lore things. Like, you can look at old Nosferatu, which is kind of different from Dracula. And he was very similar to, like, Victor. So, like, I do know Victor's backstory. So that's my version of Dracula, because that was created from some of the histories and stuff. And he was created out of spite, and it was meant to break up love, right? He loved Riha, who is that big 5-headed dragon that's above me, who you guys are fighting actually on Wednesday. And his love is what perpetuated his hatred. The fact that now he no longer can feel, and his queen, right? He always referred to her as his queen, is ripped away from him. So she is now a goddess, and he is now this immortal creature that will forever be ripped apart from him. And that's why he became so neurotic about just destroying the world just to get to his love. Like, it's a really twisted love story when you think about it. I know Dracula's a little different than that, but
yeah, I know that someone in the chat can probably correct me, but the rough sketch that I remember from original stuff is Dracula is a similar thing. It's love lost to revenge and bloodthirstiness, and I think in the original story he legit sells his soul to the devil to be never dying.
And I can't remember why though.
I can't remember why either. And then there's also the Vlad the Impaler story, which goes before even Bram Stoker. And he's certainly a bloodthirsty guy too. So the idea of, like, a bloodborne pathogen that causes vampirism is a newer idea, although I think that's a solid way to go. Let me ask you this. So, Diane, you had mentioned Voldemort, and we kind of bounced off of that idea. And then these two guys, they brought up they brought up this idea of these villains where you're like, if you kind of know the story, you're like, yeah, I kind of empathize with them. And you almost, as humans, have this idea that, well, were I put in the same situation, I don't know if I would have done something different. But with Voldemort, if you've read the books, if you've seen the movies, you know the backstory to Voldemort, and it's not very sympathetic. So we have now, I think everyone would agree, is an excellent villain who doesn't have an empathetic kind of line through his story. So what do you think that makes him so compelling when you have that difference in the backstory?
Oh man, I'm trying to like remember reading these books when I was like 13 years old. I think that like him being connected with like Harry Potter's family, and it's just, oh gosh, I'm like totally blanking. I don't know. Like, I feel like he has so much, like, Voldemort has so much hatred for himself, and that kind of, like, compels him to be nasty to other people, right? You know, like, bullies, like, they're having issues inward, so they project that outward, and he's a bully. He's projecting self-hatred, I think, outward, and then obviously, right, like, he had this relationship with Harry Potter's mother and father, and that kind of like spurred it to go even worse.
Yeah. Well, go ahead.
If I could just add a little bit to that, your Harry Potter knowledge is far beyond mine. I will tell you that right now before I open my mouth. But from what I remember, yes, he was kind of a bully, and I definitely remember that kind of self-hate. Like he came from the Muggle world, and like he was kind of seen. What was the phrase they used when you came from a non-magical
He's
world?
a Muggle-born.
Muggle.
Yeah. But I also remember though that pushed him to utter perfection. He wanted to be perfect in he was the perfect liar, the perfect caster, the perfect everything. People flocked to him, and he loved it. He kind of got energy from everyone else kind of serving him and doing what he says, like they were his puppets pretty much. So that's one of the things that I most remember about him, just his utter need for complete perfection. And I think that's actually, though it may not be completely sympathetic for us, it is definitely an interesting way to look at a villain. Like they just want to be perfect. They want to be loved, and that. So that's what I kind of.
No, absolutely, yeah.
And not to prove Godwin's law true, but he's very much like a Hitler character, right?
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, Godwin's law says the longer any online conversation goes, the more likely it is that someone's going to compare someone else to Hitler, which is why.
I had no idea.
Yeah, there's a rule for it. There's a chart with data. It's great.
Wow.
But so you look at the comparisons, and he definitely is an egomaniac. He actually and he is. I'm going to talk about both of them simultaneously. Both egomaniacs. Both are not the perfection that they want to see. They both blame other people for the problems of what they consider their people, and will go about, let's be honest, genocide to achieve those things. And there's a lot of hate and anger there, but a lot of it's rooted just in their own insufficiencies, And like you said, GW, like just wanting, really kind of gaining power from people, sycophants and followers and worshipers around them, like some kind of evil god. So there's a lot going on there. I would posit this, Diane. Tell me what you think. I think one of the reasons why Voldemort is so compelling as a villain is twofold. One is that he is so, as you mentioned, inextricably tied to Harry Potter and his backstory, that there is a natural conflict that is going to happen. It's got to happen. He's the boy who lived, and what he lived was an attack against Voldemort, right? And so it's not just some hero from out of left field to kill the evil sorcerer. It's like, no, like you killed my family, prepare to die, it's the whole, like, Voldemort made Harry. Harry wouldn't be Harry if it wasn't for Voldemort, in a multitude of ways. But also, too, I think Voldemort is so good, and this is a little bit different than the two examples you guys gave, is that he is unassailable. Yeah. He seems utterly undefeatable for most of those books, because not only was he defeated, there's always a rumor that he's going to come back, or that he is back, or he's over there, or no, he's over here, and they won't even say his name. That's legit. Like, you're like reached, a special level of villain where they won't even say your name proper. That's special. And so he's just like this mythic figure that can never truly be destroyed, which gives such a wonderful like narrative payoff when he actually is destroyed, and they continue that through line of the intertangling lives and narratives for the two until it reaches that pinnacle. So I think that's part of what gives him that gravitas.
Yeah.
I have some questions if you want me to from the chat. If you want me to throw them out there.
Yeah, and then I would actually like to try to list out. So let's do this, guys. So if you've got questions, please put them in the chat. We will get to them here in a second. We would love to answer them because that's way easier than us thinking of questions on our own. And I would also like to, at some point, for us to kind of talk about, like, let's list out like the things that make a good villain in a kind of a usable list. And if time permits, I even had this wild idea of let's create a villain for D&D like now, like with everybody.
I like that.
Like as our gift to the chat, here is a villain that you can just use and you guys can run with this.
I like that. So we'll save like the last 15 minutes or so for that.
Yeah, help me watch the clock. So let's do this. Let's kind of talk about some of the things we think you kind of have to do to make a great villain, and then we'll take some questions from the chat. And I want to start with this one. I think the very first thing you have to do with a villain to make him great is that you need to start with the villain before you do anything else.
Yes.
What I mean by that
agree.
is before you think of your hero, you have to think of your villain, because heroes only exist to push against resistance.
Yep.
And so you got to have that villain first and go, okay, I need to make him super cool. I need to make him as well fleshed out and narratively interesting as the hero, because when he gets on the stage, when he gets in the story, you want your audience or your players to be just like captivated by him, right? Mm-hmm. Like Darth Vader is only in the first Star Wars movie for like 17 minutes or something like that. I think I saw him. And every time that character walks onto the screen, people are like, yes, give me more of this guy. And we don't know anything about him, but he clearly is a three-dimensional dynamic character who is kind of unassailable. So I think that would be kind of the first step, is start with the bad guy.
Yeah.
Yes. Definitely see the peak of this bad guy at his strongest. And then after that, once you kind of visualize what you want him to be, who you want to be, and what you want him to do, then you can think about, okay, why did he go that route?
Yeah, what's his motivation?
His motivation, that's a great second point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and if you think about the three that we've kind of mentioned here, Magneto, he wants justice for his people. You think about Dracula, he wants, he in a way, he kind of wants the vicious cycle to stop that you kind of mentioned, Solo, of love and loss and revenge. And in Voldemort, he wants to put it simply, he wants to be happy. He wants to be enough, but because that's an internal struggle, he's never going to be enough. So he's going to be insatiable in his pursuits, I think. Would you agree with that, Diane?
Yeah, I do.
Cool. What else? So start with the villain, know why they want to do what they do.
I would say this actually goes into one of the questions too, is how do you
go ahead.
How do you make a villain to be a good part of the storyline? So like integrating your villain into your story or creating your story around the villain, I think would be a good number 3 for that.
Yeah, and I would say that there's 2 easy ways to do that, and I've done both. One is the Voldemort route, where you make your hero or your heroes inextricably linked to the villain and his pursuits and his motivation, like with Harry. But you can do it a multitude of other ways. I'm trying to think of, like, you think about Avatar: The Last Airbender, right? Like, obviously, so my kids just got into Avatar. They just finished it. Now they're watching Korra. And I've kind of watched some of it, and so it's pretty rad. And I'm late to the party there, but Aang is clearly linked because he's the Avatar. He's supposed to bring the balance, right? But everyone else also is like, well, the Fire Nation is going to destroy everything. We need to fight back. We need to we have a vested interest in this. We lost our father because of war. So there's that link. The other thing is that your hero can fall backwards into the story, I think. I think if you know what the have the villain fleshed out, you know their motivation, is then think about like how is this villain going to accomplish those things, and find a an arm of that branching tree of him accomplishing those things, and find a place to insert your players, because then they start here, but now they can kind of come up the tree and find out all of this stuff, and it almost builds your entire adventure for you, for them to kind of fall backwards into it. And I think that's really good. Like, you think about the original X-Men movie, GW, Magneto's the villain, but Wolverine and Rogue kind of fall backwards into this. They're not linked like that, but they definitely fall into it in a sideways kind of manner.
Exactly. So since we kind of already talked about somewhat the journey of them getting to that certain point, and how they the branches that kind of come from that journey, you can go like kind of even further. Like, what was the turning point? How did they get to that turning point?
That's what I was gonna say. I build my villains like I build characters. Like, I think about their entire history growing up, and what that moment that pushed them to be a villain, because their villains were adventurers, probably, or they could have been, right? An adventurer could become a villain if something like terrible didn't happen. They chose that path to do good, to whatever they need to do. They chose the good path, or you could have chosen the evil path and become the villain in the story. So definitely.
Yeah, exactly. And I think something I've heard many times from a variety of creators, and I think this really holds true, is that your villain needs to be convinced that they're the good guy in the story.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So I think Magneto is an excellent example of that, as well as like Zuko and others from Avatar. They're convinced that they're the good guys there, and they're responding to some kind of stimulus, to some kind of action with the experiences that they've had, which maybe is the wrong response to stimulus, but it's theirs, and they think, well, this is the only way to do it. Like we said with Magneto, he's thinking about, well, this is the right goal, but I can only accomplish it through brutal means because I live in a brutal world, right? And so his tragic backstory, which would make for a great hero, he just makes a different decision, and so now he's the villain, but not in his mind. His mind, he's like, this is the only way. They'll never understand anything but power. I think he even says those lines in some of the movies.
I'm glad you said that, because like when you think about in their mind, they have a different perspective. GW, is it fine if I tell the story?
Which one?
You know which one. The first one.
Yes, go ahead. Sure, go ahead.
GW came up with a really awesome, rich backstory for Realms of Ukador. Really, really quick story. I'm not going to go long, but his backstory, he didn't have any tragedy. I can't talk today. And he didn't have a lot of motivation, and I was trying to think of a igniter for the story. We brought in a friend of ours, a mutual friend. He streams at Quest and Chaos. His name is Ted. His name is Bo. He played a guy named Ted the Fighter. Looked like Kermit the Frog with his dad's armor on. He came in for a couple episodes. The players got to know him and found out that he was like a personal guard for GW's NPC sister. There's all this amazing roleplay, all this cool stuff. They were all defending his sister against all this evil stuff. During that fight, he hears his sister scream, "Jadobi." She turns around, and our friend Bo, who is Ted, had his knife through her heart, killing his sister in-game as a PC, who was the first villain of our storyline that was connected to two other storylines. Now, Ted, because I let him monologue a lot of this, he had it in his mind that he was trying to help. What did he always say? He was always trying to help you guys to see what he saw, because Ted experienced loss. And then Ted was controlled by somebody else, but was trying to show them that they could become stronger, which he was right, by experiencing loss. And that was something that was driven by myself and by another player, which was this really awesome dynamic. And that was actually the first scene of the entire campaign that I thought about, was that villain. But originally it was only supposed to be an NPC, and Bo was going to come on just to be a PC to have fun. And I jokingly pitched it to him. He's like, yes, let's do it. I'm like, oh my God, they're going to hate us forever. And they did. They hated us for a really long time. Probably still. I think he's still a little salty about it. But it was made for really, really good storytelling, and it showed that. It showed that his motivations and his vision was so clouded that he felt like he was doing the right thing. He felt like he was doing Jadobi a favor by killing his sister, which is obviously demented. But, yeah.
Right.
Now, to add on to that, since we're talking about their journey to that turning point, you want to, in my opinion, you want to start, as, them as just simple kids. No one is born typically, bad or evil or judging or anything like that. It's like through what they've been through to kind of like twist their mind in certain ways. And so when you're kind of in that point, in the early days of this villain, it's really good to really think about that, because once you find what it is that kind of starts twisting this person and changing them, that could make sympathy for your players.
Yeah.
You can make your players feel sympathy for them, and you can even make it conflicted. Like after you learn, the lore behind the big bad, it's just like, oh well, I feel really bad that they went through this and that and all of this, even though what they're doing right now is horrible. It's like, should we fight them? Should we just try to talk to them? So really putting human feeling into it to draw out the emotions from your players is also just a perfect aspect. Like you really almost want to split the party. It's like, no, we shouldn't do that, because no, we shouldn't. No. And it kind of like makes this whole kind of collage of discussion behind this big bad, like what they should do next.
Right. And I think there's something else too. And I saw kind of in the chat someone say that, don't fall into the trap that, all of your enemies have to be, have something where you can empathize. Like think about like Sauron, right? I'm sure if you read the Silmarillion, which everyone says they've read, no one actually has. Kidding. That there is some really cool backstory for Sauron, but in the story proper in Lord of the Rings, he's just presented as a great evil. Like there's no empathizing with Sauron, right? He's just the bad guy. He's literally a giant fiery eye. Like you can't go like, well, if I could just hug him, maybe we could just hug it out.
It's just allergies, man. He's just his eyes are red. He just
get some of that Claritin. Yeah, be fine. He lost a contact. Someone stepped on it.
That's what he's looking for. He's looking for his contact.
Oh my god.
Oh my god. No, someone make a parody of that.
But here's the thing: is that the reason we're talking about empathy and talking about the person, the BBEG's backstory and their conflict points of change is that I think the big part is that they have to be dynamic, which is why we say start with the villain first. And empathy is a great way to do that. Yeah. And when I say dynamic, I mean they can't be a cardboard cutout that just has a big label on it that says evil, kill me, right? Because that's not engaging. It's not very interesting, and that's what you want to avoid. And so that's why I think that, Diane, your comment about Voldemort, I don't empathize with Voldemort. He's a broken man who hates everything and will do anything to try to fix himself, except the therapy he so clearly needs. So I don't empathize with him, but yet he's a dynamic character. He is multifaceted, and so some of the things that you can do for that, I think, too, is don't have them just be one note all the time, not, maniacally laughing, but that they can show like elements of being lawful. I think that's really interesting when they hire someone to do something and they could just as easily kill the guy after the job's done and take the money, but they're like, no, I made a promise and I'm going to keep it, or they have a child that they love and would never do any of the stuff that they are doing to the heroes, to this child, even if they're grown or still a kid. Think about the Kingpin, right? Kingpin from Spider-Man and Daredevil is super evil, but he has a daughter and a son, not a daughter, sorry, a wife and a son who he loves so much. And he's got a little bit of empathy there, but he's totally duplicitous. And he's like, me and mine, I'm going to love them and give them the world, like any kind of like father and husband would want to do. But to the rest of the world, they can light on fire for all he cares, So the goal here isn't to make lovable, huggable. Maybe they just needed someone to love them more, villains, but make dynamic, multifaceted, three-dimensional, more than just one note villains. And for example, I think, at the risk of talking too long, like the Joker, like especially like the Heath Ledger Joker,
Yes.
like there's not a lot of empathy going on there. He's a truly frightening dude, and his backstory is petty criminal, falls in acid, goes crazy. Like that's the basic, commonality of all the versions of the Joker. There's not a lot of love there, but he's interesting. He is multifaceted. He's fully characterized in all of the different iterations, some better than others. But that he's still a great villain, even though he doesn't have that empathy element that we've kind of been talking about a little bit.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Heath Ledger, because damn, was that a really good role. Like, even he's a manipulator, and when you think about him as an actual villain, like he has nothing. He doesn't have any special powers. He has a bunch of knives. He's just maniacally smart. Like the scene with him and Harvey when he was in the hospital, that was one of the best villainous scenes I've ever done, because not only did he just made his mortal enemy his ally, like instantly, and created this diabolical thing. I mean, I wish they would have done a little bit more with Two-Face, but here we are. But it was a really, just the way that he manipulated, like, do you think that I'm the one that did this? And you're just like, wait. And you just totally questioned everything with just a couple words.
Do I look like a guy with a plan? Yeah. You're like, no, you don't look like it, but you do. You know exactly what you're doing, sir.
Well, yeah. And then they sealed the deal and they brought you back to him just being him and I know that was an actual battery issue with the clicker for like the set.
It's perfect.
Oh, it was perfect. And he improv like, what's going on here? And then it worked, and he jumped, and it goes back to him being silly and goofy and crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, the range of the Joker, him being silly, him being serious, him being manipulated, hit me, and just yelling at, whatever. Like, it was just all these crazy things all in one. It was an awesome villain. Close second to Dracula.
Yeah. Undead Joker. I'm just going to throw it out there now. All right. Hey, so I think that those kind of hit some of the major themes that people can think about as they're kind of crafting their own villains. So let's go ahead and grab some questions and
Sure.
Let's see what we can do with that.
We already answered that one, kind of. So can you describe a villain that you created, maybe one the players seem to enjoy? And then also, sidebar to that is, how do you make a good twist with villains? I think those kind of go hand in hand. But there you go.
Anybody want to start with that?
I'll go first. So, though I've only been DMing for about 7 months, I go to school for animation and character design and character development, which I've always liked. So, when I was young, and still now, I make a lot of stories. Of course, villains, superheroes, and some things of the like. One of my favorite villains that I made was he was a mutant, and he was a paraplegic pretty much, but his power was that he was a technopath, an advanced technopath. So basically he can control computers, technology, and everything just through his mind. So when he was growing up, it instilled kind of mutant abilities and stuff in my world. Is still kind of dark, weird. No one really likes them. Blah blah blah. However, he was also really really bullied and picked on for not being able to walk well, always needed crutches, things like that. And when his powers finally awakened, he started kind of building things, like his own things to walk, his own things to move, and that kept evolving until he learned how to just through his mind, just through thought, kind of build like his own mechs. He would build his mech suit so he'll be able to walk within it and move around and other things. But of course, he got kind of twisted and dark along the way. A lot of hurt can do a brain a lot of harm. So he kind of turned into the villain just by fighting back all people that were fighting him and making fun of him. And he just kind of almost through his endless connection through the cyber world, kind of almost lost himself pretty much. When you have so much information going in and out of your brain that you can kind of get lost in the cyber realm. He always came back kind of less and less of a person, until finally he kind of almost turned into a computer himself. I really liked that just because the superhero for this villain, his powers were kind of centered around more primal kind of electricity, things like that. So it was really, really difficult to fight this kind of electrical powered being who is quickly evolving into kind of like the cyber god. And the way he got there was just through tons of hurt, not being able, his limbs, didn't never really work the way he wanted them to, but then found a way to make himself move, and then just lost himself within his own power. So he is someone that I kind of hold dear. He's one of my best villains that I made. Yeah.
Right on. Diane, do you have one you want to share?
Yeah. This was in my last campaign that finished about a year ago. It was a woman. Her name was Madame Marie. She was in a noble family. Grew up as just a classic middle class human girl. Got married to the love of her life, and found out she was not able to have children, and it broke her, and they brought in a surrogate to help them build their family, and her husband fell in love with the surrogate. They made plans to run away, and this is after they've had a child already, so she had been kind of like living parallel to a life that she wanted so dearly, and then with some devilish contracts, she was building up to be able to have children, and she kind of became this immortal crazy lady who was like creating chaos all over to send souls to a devil, because he was going to make it where she could have children with her husband, who had since passed, but he was going to be reincarnated, and this led her to wreaking havoc in all of the cities, which is why my players they learned it, because people were dying from this woman who was just trying to do what she could to have a child.
Right. So that single-minded focus, despite the consequences. Chris, I know you shared one already about Vincent. Did you have another one that you wanted to briefly share about?
What was the original question again?
One that you created, villain that you created that really delighted your players.
Oh, I don't know if they delighted them. This is one of my players. Do you have one and I can talk about them, GW? Which one of my villains that you have fought was the most engaging, fun one?
The most engaging villain that I played with you?
You have Ted, you have Jaren, Victor, Vulrock, Riha.
This is where GW is like, none of them were that good. I don't know.
The current one, actually, Riha right now. Okay. I think, go with that one. I like the backstory on that.
Riha, I need to get Riha. I can't do this without having Riha.
He brought props. Hey, are those jammy shorts or okay?
They're like board shorts. Dude, it's like 90 degrees in here. So real quick, Riha is the goddess of darkness. Riha, she was Jocelyn the White. She was a fallen angel, daughter of Azir, who is my Zeus. She went to a place. She fell in love with Victor, who is my Dracula. Long story short, she fell in love with him, and Vulrock, who is my Asarak. So Asarak of Forgotten Realms, the Archlich, whatever. He's Vulrock. He manipulated Jocelyn, turning her into Riha, and she attacked and Vulrock created Victor. But she thought she did. Long story short, there was a love story between Victor, who's my Dracula, and Riha, who's my goddess of darkness, and Vulrock. So this pyramid of three big bads in my story, all thinking something different. Long story short, Vulrak created Riha to be this goddess of darkness who then manipulated things and all this stuff. But she has this really awesome story where it was, again, everything is like her and Victor are super close because Victor was a love story and she's a love story, and now she's past that. She just wants to watch the world burn. So her as a villain has evolved. Now these guys above me, like this is one of my fun ones because it's the end of the campaign. Riha is essentially my Tiamat, who is a 5-headed dragon, who is what I call a megachromatic dragon, which is a manipulation of dragons.
So dope.
And the difference is Riha, Tiamat's a punk compared to Riha. Let's just be frank. Riha has 3,600 hit points and does a lot more damage than Tiamat does. Just to put in perspective how hard she was.
Like a Final Fantasy villain.
It was ridiculous. But these guys killed her in that form. Now they're trying to hunt for her, find her where she is regrouping as the goddess Riha, who is our finale, which is on Wednesday. But I think it's been the most fun because it's been this long time coming. Like, I know some people, I'll go on a really quick tangent. I know some people like to have different villain arcs, but technically all of my arcs have been connected. It all leads back to Riha. The first one was Ted the Fighter, who led us to Jaren, who was being manipulated by Travanis, who was actually connected to Victor, who is also connected to Vulrak and Riha. So all these villains are all part of the same arc that has been going on for a really long time. So I'm really excited about it. I'm really proud of my players because they just kicked the fuck out of her hard. They went through 3,600 hit points ridiculously fast, and it was just the beautiful part of oh my god, I think I'm gonna kill my players too. Oh my god, my players have been prepping so long and they've been working really well and they're doing all the really cool things and they're killing her and it's amazing. Yes,
well, they're on their side of the table going, oh crap, oh crap, oh crap,
yes,
oh crap.
But it does lead back to the way that I DM. It's not my story, it's not my game, it is my world. I built the world and I put the things in the world. It is their story, so they're the ones pushing it. I'm rooting for them. They know this. When I play NPCs, I'm yeah, natural 20. I just natural 20 to myself, and I'm really excited because I'm the player. I'm the NPC player. Yeah, fuck you. But yeah, so it was all these really fun things. But yeah, Riha's a really good one.
Yeah, I'll share one really briefly. The one that comes to mind is Amis, who was in the beginning of the Fables storyline. The finale is at 3:00 Pacific. And Amis, basically, he's the bad guy simply because he is fueled by trying to avoid a loss of relevance. Simple as that. The short version is that he is a human monk who was what would be the equivalent of a 4-time Olympic champion in a world where every other race lives longer than him and is in the prime longer than him. And so the fact that he did this 4 years in a row is amazing, but now he's old, and so he's kind of like the master of ceremonies.
Yeah.
And in their game, he had basically brokered a deal with a necromancer who promised to reinvigorate him with life so that he would still be the best, and allowed this necromancer to do some pretty terrible things, all the while Amis is playing the helpful, kind old man who's the master of ceremonies, is friendly with all of the, kind of different nations, the leaders, and well respected. And in the end, it doesn't, he's empathetic, but at the end, it doesn't matter. I don't think anyone in that game solo ever thought for a split second, maybe we could talk him down. Maybe we could hug it out because, right?
I was a barbarian. I wasn't going to talk.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But no, I don't think anybody else did either. I think at that point, because we felt so betrayed, I think we made a Lance Armstrong joke, someone was using performance enhancement drugs or something during the thing. Because we're trying to compete, but then we're also trying to find things. And I think by that time, we were so just pissed off that these sand creature hands kept coming and fucking with us. We're like, it's you. And it was no, it was just it was one fluid motion. Our eyes were closed, we're swinging. Oh, it's you. It doesn't matter. And then, it could have been my mother, and I probably would have been still hacking her down. Oh, sorry. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, and the great thing about Amis is that because he had a desire for relevance, there was no way he was going to back down, because win or lose, he's relevant. So, let's take another question from the chat.
Did you ever get frustrated when your villains die before you get to do cool stuff with them?
Yes.
That's a great question. I have an answer for this. Go ahead, y'all.
Go ahead. You go.
Well, I was going to say, I'd say yes. When I first started DMing, I would always get super upset. And then I just started being like, okay, well, they've gone through the hit points I've allotted. Well, now I'm just going to keep them going until I think it's a cool moment for them to kill them.
I do that too. Like a lot of times with my enemies, except for Riha, I knew how many hit points she had. A lot of times I don't have like a max. We also do things for show purposes. So I will kind of balance things because I also give my players a lot of really awesome magic weapons. So they do a lot more damage than I think they would do sometimes. So like you try to keep things balanced. I actually don't get angry that they do things or don't do things. If they don't, I take whatever that cool idea is, I put that on the shelf. I'm like, you're going to come back later for next time. And you're going to come out earlier next time to make sure that I actually get that out there. But, yeah.
For me, I have not yet reached a point to where the players take down the big bad without me being able to do like all the things I want. Because, Chris knows and some of our viewers may know, I play a druid on our Wednesday game, and I always have plans on plans, and I try to kind of place everything strategically. And I actually have like a cheat sheet list in front of me. Like I want to start with that, want to do this. This is going to be a follow up. So I do that. That kind of goes over to my DMing of the enemies. So not yet have I come into contact with them taking down the villain too quickly. I'm sure that will come sometime down the line pretty soon. And I'll be like, oh man, but I was gonna summon an army. But as of right now, I have not yet went past that threshold of not having enough time to do things. But I can imagine it being one kind of you being proud as the DM for your players coming together like a team and kind of just like coming to like mess shit up pretty much. And on the other hand, being the DM going like, oh, but there was still more. So
you could have done so much more if you only had time. So what I would say is if that's a concern of yours, don't give them the bad guy yet. And here's what I mean. In my example about Amis, he wasn't the main bad guy of the story. In fact, not to spoil it, Solo, you still haven't met the bad guy of that story. Okay, so give them sub-bosses, like mini-bosses. Let's talk about Star Wars. Darth Vader is not the main villain in that original trilogy. It's the Emperor. Yeah. And we get, like, a hologram of him in New Hope? That's it. Let's talk about Voldemort. Voldemort doesn't actually factually show up until, like, the 4th book out of 7, right? Yeah. There's a ton of his other agents, other bad guys that are still thematically and sometimes physically connected to Voldemort they have to deal with, but they don't get to him yet. And so what I would say is this is in that kind of planning stage of what do they want and how are they going to get it? Yeah. The main bad guy doesn't do his own dirty work, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So think of like who would they hire? Who would they contract? Who would be their minions to go out and send them out into the world to do these things? Yeah. And so it's always great when you have that front-facing bad guy that they can fight, and like you said, find ways for them to kind of get out of there to keep becoming reoccurring, because reoccurring villains are so much fun. But that when it finally does happen, and you know it will happen, they'll kill them. Well, they just killed one head of the Hydra, as it were. And now they still have to go back to the real power behind the throne, as it were. So just give them some levels of obscurity. Not only does that make them more interesting because you want to see who's behind the curtain, but you don't lose your kind of whole idea in your narrative too soon. Let's do one more question, and then let's try to see if we can't build our own villain
let's do that. Just real quick to piggyback on that. So when these guys fought Vulrock the first time, it was a surprise. They weren't ready for him. They were fighting their inner demons. They were in the 9th level of hell, which is like my nightmaric hell. So it was bringing all these enemies back. So a lot of these big bads that we've talked about came back to fight them in this tournament, and then Vulrock shows up. So the whole point, there's a lot of plot points, but it wasn't Vulrock at 100%. It was him at like 50, 60%, and they beat him, but it was enough to be like, oh, wait, we're not ready. And then they ended up like changing their strategy, and then when they fought him the final time. So it was like a really fun introduction, because they were also tapped. They used most of their spell slots. HP was low, and they're like, "Oh, we're not ready for this." But they did really well, and it was a really awesome dice rolls, and it set the stage for all the other things. But so last question. Ooh, we gotta be a good one. Do you have any tips for making the final boss battle with the main villain dynamic, given the action economy issue, without just adding minions? I have a really good
Dang
answer
it, that
for
was going to be my answer. Minions.
I was gonna say minions too, but creating a cool environment.
Yes. Layer actions for sure. I mean, these guys know
Layer
because
actions,
I've given them way too many awesome things. When you have one enemy versus 5 or 6 PCs, it's really hard if you only have 2 attacks. So you give your big baddie more attacks or more legendary actions. Riha had 3 reactions and 7 legendary actions, and also a couple legendary resistances, which is ridiculous. But it makes things a little bit more exciting because when you hit these players and you hit them hard, they lose half their HP from one hit. They're like, oh, we have to, like, it makes them think, and they have to adjust and figure out things because they know at any time someone could drop. And having that being a reality is a lot different than fighting an enemy who only has 2 actions or 2 reactions, and they can't hit everybody. They can't, especially if you don't have an AoE thing. That used to be my thing. Is I used to give my enemies like an AoE attack just so I can like clear the board, get away from me. But I like the legendary action better because it gives more options to spread out the attacks, especially a 5-headed dragon. They can do a bunch of things. But yeah.
So to add on to what you all have said already, definitely another thing is strategy. So if you don't want, too many things cluttering your battlefield, as everyone said here, legendary actions and of course layer actions, you can really be smart and tactful about what the big bad is doing. Focus on one player, just take down, and then focus on the next one. And they're like, oh, they're going, we're going down one by one, and so they have to kind of like struggle to kind of start, rezzing people or healing them to get them back up faster than they're going down. So that can be another thing to kind of like thrill your players. It's like, oh no, they're focusing on me, and now I'm next, and it kind of brings a feeling of fear, also an anxiety, which is kind of fun to put on your players.
Yeah, and to jump on that too, GW, I think like you said, like it's the strategy, it's the environmental effects, like you said, Diane. There's an excellent book that I would recommend for further reading. It's by the Lazy DM, called "The Monsters Know What They're Doing."
I always look at, and they have a website too. I always look at that.
Yeah, it's an excellent resource. We don't get any money for this. Go buy it, make somebody happy. But I would say this as well is think about the win conditions.
Yeah.
Okay. Give your players multiple ways they could win that encounter. Okay. So let's go back to Voldemort, right, Diane? So there's multiple ways you could have ended that final battle. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
He could have broken the Master Wand. He could have killed Voldemort outright. Harry could have killed himself in that situation and probably have done something, right? You think about the Death Star scene in the last Star Wars movie, the original trilogy. There was a couple of ways they could have ended that fight. It almost feels like when Vader turns and throws him down the shaft. You haven't seen this movie yet. You're 30 years too late. I'm not spoiling anything. And he gets exploded. That almost feels like a D&D, like a player has a wild idea.
Yeah.
And it turns out great. I'm like, that's actually really good writing. Because that's not how I thought that would end. So think about like the multiple win conditions. Do you stop Dr. Evil because you killed Dr. Evil? Or because you turned his number 1 against him, or because you unplugged his doomsday machine, So think about the multiple win conditions, because then some people might be fighting, and other people are like, well, I'm the rogue. I'm going to sneak over here and see if I can't pull this lever and make this whole thing moot, but I got to go through all of these zombies first, So I think there's a couple of ways you can really dice it up.
Yeah, I agree.
So last thought. So we're going to create our own villain right now. My only point would be, let's make this for not tabletop. Let's just make this for a villain in general, because the chat was asking a lot about non-D&D, non-tabletop villains. So I think that would be a good, because you can use a villain for anything. Really.
As well.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's the thing, guys, is like we're talking about application in D&D, but everything that we've talked about in the construction of what makes really dynamic, breathed upon, and lived in villains works in any scenario, right? We're just talking about these concepts and how to filter them into the context of D&D, but any of these things work for anything. I think a lot of like, I'll fanboy for a second. I just binged all of the Umbrella Academy season 2 this week. It came out on Friday. I'm done. And um, they do a great job of all of these things. All of the villains in there really are believable, and you don't necessarily empathize with some of them for sure. But man, they're dynamic. Man, they're real, and you love to hate them, and they show up on the screen, and you're like, yeah, they're gonna wreck you. And there's more than one villain, and there's the win condition at the end of that season. There's multiple options there, and they do a great job of showing that. So let's talk about a villain. I want to put out the initial like prompt and see if we can't go there. I would like to see what we can do with the concept of a married couple as the bad guys. Okay. And I hate to say any references because I don't want to influence it, but a married couple and they're your bad guys for your story. So what can be let's talk about what do they want? Like, what are their motivations? What's the turning point where they decided that this bad action was the best good for them or for others?
A married couple. A turning point for them.
Losing a child.
So I'm gonna throw out just a couple of ideas. Let's see what sticks. Let's see what doesn't. As Diane said, like maybe it has to do with a child. Maybe they lost one too soon and they weren't ready for that. Maybe they want that lost child back. Maybe.
What about being rejected by their family? Almost a Romeo and Juliet thing.
That's a good idea.
But instead of killing themselves, they decided to strike against the world.
That's funny. That's if Viago's parents decided to be evil because they both were rejected. But we won't go there.
Oh.
Yeah. What else?
Do they truly love each other? Or are they just using each other for each other's power?
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
That they're is mutually beneficial, that's the nature of the relationship, but not love or anything else like that, or even just like lust or whatever. It's the dynamics a little bit different. They have converging motivations. I like that too. So do you want to go with like the rejection of the family, or we have another idea?
Let's go with that. Let's go with the rejection of the family.
All right. So married couple, both the families rejected them, and so now what do they want? Like, why did they decide striking out against the world or doing villainous things? Why was that the most logical thing for them to do? Why not just get an apartment in Soho and say, forget our families, we're just going to live together and whatever.
If they lost something by being rejected, so Romeo and Juliet's a good example. They both come from powerful families with a lot of history and wealth. So being rejected, you would lose that.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. And so what if the families rejected them for political reasons, right? There's a whole, like I made this joke with you guys earlier that one of the, I asked my wife who her favorite villain was in literature, and she likes Victorian, Edwardian literature. And I suggested the best villain in those books is the Victorian social structure, and which is very prim and proper. And like all those books just have the basis of, I wish I could smooch so-and-so, but I can't because if he'd had a better job, then I could smooch him, or he had better manners. So what if they decide that, well, the reason they don't want us to be together, we decided to be together and they rejected us, is because of like political machinations and societal pressures. So it's literally the world around them made their families do this, and so they're like, all right, well, we're going to strike against the world.
Yeah.
And I got a rough idea that maybe through the rejection of their families, that they don't like their love, maybe since they do have, both have powerful families, and both families have kind of their fingers in different places across the world. Maybe their families are trying to send people to break up their marriage or possibly kill them because they are maybe a stain on both their family names and they want to erase them.
Yeah. Oh, what about this? What if they're an arranged marriage, which is why they don't love each other? Instead of getting married, they decided to buck that whole system. They're still together. They're working together, but they decided not to get married because that's what they wanted.
So they're partners,
but yet they're
in crime.
together.
Yeah.
They're partners in crime, and they're like, you know what? You wanted us together? Fine, you got us together, but we're not doing it on your terms. And they're wanting to kind of slowly just break down not only their families, but the whole structure that they represent.
I like that.
So how would that tie into the family's rejection? If
because they rejected them. Like if they run off and don't get married, whatever political or social deal families had set up just went to crap. Like that just fell apart, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I like that GW's taking notes. This is great.
Yeah.
If I don't write this down, it will just.
No, I think that's great. I like that. So that's why they decided that everything had to burn. That's their motivation. They don't really love each other, but they're together because their purposes, for now at least, align.
Yeah.
So what is the barrier that's in the way of them accomplishing their goals?
Well, I think it's the moral dilemma. So like if they want to make this change, blood's going to have to be spilt, right? If enough of the people who are in power, this is the way, right? So if that's the way, that means it's the way politically, culturally, which means in order to have any shift like that, a civil war would need to happen. Which
Yeah,
means
that's
they would
what I
need
was
allies,
thinking.
and then people would need to be removed from those positions in order for this to be happening. So it could be like the French Revolution, right? Like it
Yeah.
you know.
Oh, like what if they're trying to like work behind the scenes so that the two families end up going to war? Like literally war, not just like a trade war, but like legit, like you said, civil war.
Yeah.
And they're trying to work in the shadows. Like they know all of the family's holdings. They know how all the politics work. They had to learn all the etiquette and go to those stupid parties. And now they're going to use all the training that you guys gave us.
Yeah. We're
going to use it against you. We're going to throw that in your face too.
Yep.
See, I want to play these characters now.
Break the family that forced them together.
Yeah, which in turn is going to further break the kind of societal system that they kind of were like, no, this is dumb.
Yeah.
In there. Cool. Any thoughts from the chat to help flesh these guys out?
I mean, a lot of the things coincide with what we were just talking about.
Like, oh, Godfather 3.
Page.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
it would be great is if I saw someone just say Wookiee gunner is like their parents have power in government. What about this? One family is very politically connected. The other family is like the de facto, like they run the church, whatever that means, right? So you could place this like, what if you place this like in Utah, right? One is like state government, the other is the Mormon church. And they're from those families, and they're like, all right, well, they wanted to consolidate power. We're going to break that up. Or if you put it in a medieval setting, it's the Roman Catholic Church and the feudal system or whatever. But not just both of them are in government, both of them are from two different power structures, which is why they wanted the arranged marriage, right?
Yeah.
That's why they wanted the linking together.
That makes sense.
I have an
I like that a
interesting
lot.
monkey wrench that I want to throw out there, and you guys can chew on it,
Please.
throw it back. So what if these two, they don't get arranged marriage, they decided to partner up to start this revolution. One of them, so then you said that these two families are at war now, so a lot of people are dying. What if one of these two people have a change of heart? So one starts to become chaotic or lawful evil, the other one starts to retract, making this now a dynamic, which means one ends up becoming the protagonist, realizing, oh fuck, we've gone too far, and the other one keeps going. So what happens at that point?
I like that. What if one of them goes even more chaotic and the other one starts to catch feelings?
Yeah. Like watching their family members die. Watching
Well, you know,
innocent people die. They lose sight of what this is for.
Yeah. Diane?
They're trying to, well, initially they were trying to create good change, and it went evil. And the one's like, well, no, we're trying to not, have a war maybe, or we're just trying to break our families up and not have arranged marriages. And
Yeah, I think like one of them would be like just for the excitement of it, because the structure they grew up in is so confining that they don't
yeah,
want to watch the world burn. They just want some excitement, man.
yeah,
And then the other one, maybe it was just like, yeah, I think this is dumb, but I can see past all the bull, and I see that this whole system's corrupt. And so maybe he's the one who becomes the like, no, we got to watch it all burn. And the other one's like, hey, this was fun at first, but I'm not so sure. But yet they have really caught feelings for the partner.
Yeah.
And so they don't just like out and out, which is cool
Right.
because that whatever the climatic battle is, that gives you another win condition.
yeah.
You can beat them,
Yeah.
you can foil their plans, or you can turn them against each other. I kind of like where that's going. Those are great ideas.
Yeah, the chat
Yeah.
said, "What if that's the great hook? So one of the one that's going off the reservation is your big bad, and the one that starts having feels becomes one of your PCs, and this is all your backstory."
Yes.
Maybe.
What if that one is your secret benefactor who has been helping you, giving you clues and giving you intelligence and stuff? Like you don't know, like Charlie's Angels. That's dumb, I know, but like you don't know who Charlie is. But like the chair turns around and it's like one of the bad people you've been trying to kill, and they're like betrayal, but maybe not.
Yeah.
But so you're going to leave him? Well, no, I'm not going to leave him. What do you mean? Well, you need to stop us, but I can't stop him. I can't stop this. Like, oh, that's
That's Azir
giving
in Realms of Ukador right there. He didn't want to
just
kill his
giving-
daughter. Yeah.
Just giving enough information for them to know how to take them down. But of course, they can't be seen with you doing this. You have to do it on your own. But this is how you can't. This is how to give you a better chance to do it.
Yeah, and I think that the narrative is that the hero or heroes don't find out who their kind of like benefactor is until much later, like 2/3 of the or 3/4 of the story through, as things are ramping up to a final confrontation. I think that'd be really good. And man, and also too, the whole dynamic of the two different power bases are both being attacked, but they both hate each other. So you're not going to be able to get a lot of like help or friendliness from either side as the heroes, because now you're fighting a war on 2 or 3 fronts as you're trying to resolve all this. Like, oh, you're trying to here to help us. Why would you help those jerks from the government?
No.
Wait, I thought you were with us. No, I'm just trying to stop all this. You're not worth it. You're with them. All that kind of stuff. I really like this idea, and
So-
I hope this also is generic enough that it doesn't have to be D&D. It can be your best. Listen, if you turn this into a best-selling young adult fiction, you need to make sure to like the thank you is to us. Just saying.
So to boomerang back to their arranged marriage. So
Yeah.
for me, just personally, I can't really empathize with them just because they were forced together. They don't love each other. But maybe to add on to that, maybe the reason why they hated it so much as they did to kind of start backstabbing their own family, that maybe they were in love with other people that they couldn't be with.
I was thinking about that actually as well, GW.
Yeah.
Just so when
And
the
that
story
could-
is being told,
that
you feel
could be an ally. Yeah, that could also be an early
Yeah.
ally, possibly for
Oh yeah.
your heroes.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think perhaps the one of the partnership who sees the BS behind the system and wants to burn the whole thing down, maybe they were the one who had another love.
Yeah.
That makes more sense for that side of the equation, because the other one feels like they've been constricted and not allowed to live. And
maybe that particular NPC that was once the true love of the one of the big bats that went evil. Maybe you can get more information from them about like maybe their earlier years before they kind of got twisted by their family's decisions, to kind of give you even more lore about this character, and maybe how you can when you do face them, kind of attack them psychologically as well to kind of maybe help your chances.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like the idea that there might be good fodder for some like minions. Like I don't see them doing this just solo, not just pure Bonnie and Clyde. Like I think that they're smart enough, like we said, like they know how the politics work. They have potentially still some resources left over from being part of the families and the power structure that they might have kind of worked with a already malcontent element in the world becomes who become their leaders of, but yet then there's another tension there, like who was the old leader of this other malcontent? Is it the leader of another nation that wants to destroy this nation? Is it a true resistance who wants to see the overthrow of the power structure, but then realizes, oh, they want to go way further, right? You have people who are zealots who are suddenly in charge of the French Revolution. That's different. Or even the French resistance in World War II. Like if you have some true zealots in there, like that goes wrong fast. And so now there's another kind of conflict there too. That either the old leader of it either sees their way to like usurp them once they get far enough, or there's conflict, or they get killed, or whatever. They have their own motivations. And so, yeah, I'm liking the structure very well. Is there anything we've kind of left out to kind of present these bad guys, or anything lingering from the chat maybe that they're like, this, you're missing this, obviously. They should have a cat. I don't know.
I mean, everyone should have a cat, but...
No.
Maybe that we possibly missed.
A dog under 15 pounds is basically a cat.
I talked about. Go ahead, Chris.
No, you can go.
I know we talked about kind of other NPCs, kind of help them that are kind of on the inside or have known the villains before they had that turning point. But maybe if this wasn't said already, the many people in their web that they are connected with that kind of listen to them and do their bidding. Maybe some of them, don't like being told what to do, and maybe they feel like, this power, it took a turn. Like, even though they got what they want from the deal, things are getting way too dark, and they're kind of second guessing what they've been doing. So maybe they can also be little insights to the players as well. Like, okay, well, you didn't hear this from me, but no. And maybe that can also be other breadcrumbs to take them to the next person in the web that may or may not help them and furthermore.
Awesome.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, for sure. Just keep adding that tension, layers upon layers. Plans on plans. But yeah, so hey guys, this is going to do it for us. I think we're going to wrap this thing up. Yep. Thanks for all of the questions. Thanks for all the comments. You guys are amazing. I love just having to, when I have to slow the roll of the comments to be able to catch all the goodness. That's a great problem to have. Please hang. If you can hang out for another 40 minutes or so. Ukador Fables is going to be starting at the top of the hour in whatever time zone you're in about 40 minutes. You don't have to know the backstory for this session, but it is the finale of this. All of this previous episodes are up on the YouTube and I think here on Twitch as well in the previous videos. And we're super excited about it. We'd love for you guys to hang out and watch us play some D&D. Chris, any final thoughts?
Yes. So real quick, the second that I stop this stream, I'm going to start up the hold screen for 40 minutes. The reason why I'm doing that is because I am going to do a D&D book giveaway. So if you are in chat, stay in chat. I will activate a giveaway once I start the new stream. It'll be exclamation point raffle. Not yet, but in a second when I start it in chat. For a D&D book of your choice. If you are not in the United States or Canada, excluding Quebec, you will get a physical copy. If you are outside of that, I will give you a D&D Beyond copy, which is a loophole around shipping giveaway things that don't quite work with that. So stay tuned. Give me about less than 5 minutes to stop a stream, start a new stream, and then we'll see you guys in about 40 minutes. Thank you all so much for all your questions and all this stuff.
Don't worry, guys.
Thank you.